At that time, the British Empire was huge. You know, it ruled 450 million people, a quarter of the population, and they were spread all over the world. And so they were spread very thin. You know, they were constantly putting down revolts. But to them, you know, these little colonial wars that they would fight, it was all about gallantry, you know, and being dashing, and they hated losing their red coats. You know, they thought the khakis made them look like bus drivers, and they were still, even, you know, for the Boer War, when it began, they were still fighting in these perfect, precise lines.
So the Boer War really was a prelude to World War I.
It absolutely was. It was the beginning of modern warfare, and I think, you know, not that many Americans especially know much about the Boer War, but it was some of the first guerrilla fighting, it was the first concentration camps, the modernization of weapons, and all of those things. So the British Army going in was completely different from the British Army coming out, and it prepared them for World War I.
Right. You write really splendidly about the Boers, people whom most of us know, about whom we know very little. Is the Boer presence in South Africa still very strong?
Well, they obviously the prelude to the Afrikaners, and fortunately things are changing a lot. You know, the Boers were interesting people. They were very independent. They were very religious, and they were unabashedly racist. And you know, that's sort of what you may have heard of the Great Trek, where in 1835 they moved from the Cape hundreds of miles into the interior, and that was set off primarily by the fact that 2 years earlier the British Empire had abolished slavery. And so even though the British Empire promised people in Africa, native Africans and the Indian population that was living there, that as soon as they won the war, things would change and be better for them, as we all know, that took much longer than anyone would have hoped. And so, of course, there is still an Afrikaner presence, but you know, obviously Nelson Mandela was a huge breaking point for that, and things have changed quite a bit.